Real quick, just stepping in to remind everyone that I have a movie channel. Check out my movie channel if you want. It's Jackson Kruger Movies. The link is in the description below, so if you're tired of just hearing my bad sports takes and want to also hear some bad movie takes, make sure you check that out. Again, link is in the description below. So the NFL has recently made some rule changes to the kickoff, and we got to see these rule changes in action in the Hall of Fame game. They've been met with a ton of criticism online, but, I always try to go in with an open mind with these things. I try to not just hate on rule changes for the sake of hating on rule changes. So, is this a overblown issue or is it a real issue? Well, I think it's a real issue, and let's talk about kind of the problems I have and also the things I think it does do better. Let's just get into it. First, let's start off with this play, the one you see on your screen, where I'm going to circle the player who receives the ball, and kind of the logic behind this is pretty simple. So if you're someone who is unaware of this whole situation, you've checked out of football after the Super Bowl and are just paying attention now, you see how it's lined up differently. And I think the logic behind this actually kind of makes some sense. One of the reasons why these kickoffs can be so dangerous is because you have players running at full speed, getting kind of a full running start, and then running into each other. Whereas here, you're essentially getting rid of that running start. You're just kind of having them more or less like just start to play later. So then the receiver makes the catch, receives the kickoff, and then the play begins, and now you see that due to these blocks, none of these really seem like dangerous blocks, right? No one's hitting each other that hard. They're all, physical plays because it's football. There is still going to be an inherent risk just because that's the way the sport works. But the safety aspect of this does seem to be better, and this is the benefit of it. So is it safer, which is kind of the first thing you have to look at with a play like this? It appears to be so, although I would say I still do have some concerns. So like this next one, this is actually the first kickoff we saw of the game. I think this is a good example of how a lot of these plays are going to end up going, where again, I've circled the player who's going to be getting the ball right here when it begins. You're going to kind of see him fake as though he's going one way, but then cuts more over the middle. That's, I think, what we're going to see a lot of. Is just trying to make essentially one or two guys miss and then run and get past that initial, line of defense. Because you see where he is right here. He's not going to get past this. He's going to get tackled. But let's just assume for a second he would have been able to get past this area. There are a couple of Chicago players that I've circled in yellow who could potentially run over and make a tackle, but if the Houston player can get through this area quickly, he could potentially have a touchdown, right? Again, like I said, it doesn't work out, but I think the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it basically tells you the strategy. You don't want to just try and get to a spot and try to get as many yards as possible. You want to get to a spot quickly, because if you can run fast and make one guy miss quickly, you're not just getting a few extra yards, you're getting potentially a touchdown. So that is the game here. But then going over to one like this is a concern I do have with some of these kickoffs, is that, well, yes, I do think it's a lot safer for 21 out of the 22 players. I do worry a little bit about the guy who's actually having the ball here, because he's still running at full speed. And as you see, he's just going to, take off at full speed, try to get through a gap, and essentially just run straight into somebody. And this is something we would see, we're going to see, I think, with some of this. So that's a concern. It is. Doesn't mean it's not a safer play, just something I'm bringing up as something I've noticed as maybe it's not a safer play for everyone involved. But that's the safety side of things. And, the first question is it actually doing what it's supposed to be doing? Does it appear to be safer? And I think the answer is yes. I think the issue is that's not the only reason you make a rule change, and it's certainly not the only thing you can pay attention to when making a rule change. At the end of the day, it still is an entertainment product. So is it more entertaining, or is it equally as entertaining as a regular football kickoff that we've seen in the past? Well, first, let's go over to this kickoff. This is the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl, which, I think this is the play that the NFL is in part trying to get rid of because they don't feel it to be an incredibly, exciting play. You see Harrison Butker is going to kick the ball just out of the end zone, and that's it. There's really no play here. So I think this is why the NFL is in part trying to make something different happen, because they're trying to get more of these, kick returns. I think one of the issues, though, is that at least for a play like this, you do get that initial energy of once the kickoff happens, a lot of players are moving, right? And there's that just sort of burst of energy of like, okay, things are going, we're off and moving here, the game has begun. But then you go over here, and maybe it's just the camera angle, I don't know, but like, man, does this look boring, right? I can't even show the whole clip because I'll get copyrighted, so I can only play like a 5-second clip. It's more than that, which is more than the length of most football plays. And again, I mean, you have a decent chunk of guys standing around waiting for the kicker to kick the ball off, and then you have to wait for the guy to make the catch, and then everyone starts moving. But just, I think that kind of lull in the action, it's very visually uninteresting as you're just kind of bored. And instead of getting that initial jolt of energy that is really fun especially the opening kickoff is really fun, you kind of miss that. Also, these situations where the way it has to work now is if it's too windy, instead of just having a player, hold the ball, you have to have an extra player come onto the field to hold the ball, which that's fine, right? In theory, who cares? But the issue is they have to get off the field because they can't be making a tackle if it is a long return or just creating a distraction if it's a long return. But because of that, it leads to this kind of very awkward, like jogging off the sideline type thing, which again, it just doesn't have that energy now when you're watching it visually. Instead of making it feel like, okay, here we go, we're off and running, it just feels like, okay, I guess we're just kind of going through the motions. Again, practically all of it makes sense, but from an entertainment perspective, one of the best things about a kickoff is just the energy you get right when toe hits leather. You're missing that now. And not to mention, some of these are still going to result in touchbacks, which is incredibly visually uninteresting then, because then you're missing out on the entire energy buildup that you get right when the kickoff happens, but you don't even get to see a play. So you just basically watched for 15 seconds to see absolutely nothing. At least with the other kickoff, it seems to be kind of over a lot quicker. So that, because, you kind of don't pay attention until you see the actual kickoff. Here, it's almost like you have to pay attention a little earlier. So because of that, I think those are the issues. Some of this can just simply be solved with, I think, shooting these differently. I think if they do a close-up of the kicker and then maybe go to a close-up of the guy who's waiting to get the ball, and then the second he's about to get the ball, then you go to more of a wide shot to get everybody, I could see that kind of flowing a little bit nicer, but as of right now, it's just very visually uninteresting. And not to mention stuff like this, I saw a decent amount of players fall in this situation. I don't know exactly what that was, but it did seem to be happening. It could just simply be due to either, it's the preseason, so you're not getting starters, although they're still professional athletes, so I don't know if I would say that's totally fair. Could have been a field issue. Could have been the fact that, guys are doing something they're not used to doing. It also could just simply be, though, that, like I said, the strategy is you have to move quickly to try and get through a gap, so maybe it's just going to result in more guys kind of stumbling over themselves and not have the cleanest cuts, which again is part of the fun of this. But heading over to this last play before I give my final thoughts on everything, I think this is the other thing worth talking about. So okay, there's that incredibly, in my opinion, boring build-up before the kick return happens, but you are at least getting more kick returns. And I think that's another aspect of this. It's safer and you get more kick returns. What's the downside there? Well, again, you might be getting more kick returns, but you want to see not just kick returns, but interesting kick returns, right? And I think one of the issues with just because we already know where all the players are at this point is you don't really have time as a viewer to process what's happening. Like you see this one, it's going to be, a Chicago player gets the ball, just runs straight forward and eventually gets tackled. Not the most, in my opinion, interesting play. And if he did do something impressive that got past, you probably wouldn't notice it until he does get past everybody. So it would kind of just be like, okay, is this going to be the play we usually see? Oh no, it's actually something huge. And I think that moment would be cool, but I think that's only going to happen every now and then, and I don't think it's going to actually make that much more interesting plays. So those are kind of my thoughts on this. Another thing worth mentioning is that touchbacks now get the ball 2 to 30, which is something I just don't love. Touchbacks, wasn't that long ago. They only got the ball 2 to 20-yard line. I get that I guess you want more scoring and all that, but I don't know. It feels like we don't need to make it more easy for offenses, I feel like. Maybe they kind of have to do it this way, I guess. But I don't know. Kind of a weird situation, I would say, all around. Again, I'm not against rule changes, and I will give this more of a shot. I think it did not go particularly well the first time we saw it, but an element of this is just going to be getting used to it as well, right? It feels like not a football play because it hasn't been a football play, but as of right now, it just, I think, kind of doesn't feel like football, right? It feels like its own thing, and I'm not necessarily saying that they should just continue to do the more violent play just to do the more violent play because I like it more. Like, if this is safer, okay, do the safer thing. I'm fine with sacrificing some of my entertainment to do the safer thing. I think that's totally okay. But I do think there are some issues that maybe they didn't think about, specifically with how, again, I think that initial like 5-second waiting period from when toe hits leather to actually getting the ball. I think that's something that they need to pay attention to more. Part of me was wondering, if do you even need the kickoff here? Could you just have the returner just run straight forward? Or maybe what you do is that's just what you do, is you keep the camera angle on the returner, because then it's once, as a audience member, once you see him with the ball, then we're off and running. That might be a better solution potentially. Although personally, I always kind of like the idea of just have it be a punt instead of a kickoff. Punts are a lot safer, and they're usually just more interesting to watch. Just start with a punt like you typically do instead of the kickoff. That might be not a terrible idea either. I don't know. I like that they're trying something, but so far it's just not working for me. But those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.